What if radical honesty could be a powerful catalyst when designing your legacy? I'd like to welcome Matthew Stafford to the Design Your Legacy podcast this lovely Friday morning. Welcome, Matthew.
Thank you for having me.
It is my pleasure. So, would you share a little bit about yourself as well as, who's inspired you in your lifetime? What's the backstory for the listeners?
Yeah, so I guess I'll give you the Cliff Notes version. Um, I had dealt with a lot of trauma as a child, and so as we'll get into later on with the questions, I developed a lot of internal beliefs around that, and so I think I always the moment I got to young adulthood, I started looking for answers. And so I would say at that point of my life, books were very instrumental because one of my trauma patterns was that I was the only safe place for me. And so it made it very hard for me to really go very deep with people. The closer the relationship would develop, the further that would feel unsafe for me. And so I would kind of withdraw. So I would say the majority of my life until the last 5 to 6 years, books and courses and things like that have really been what I use to mentor myself and kind of work through things.
That's wonderful. Thank you for the vulnerability and sharing. And you're in the Florida area right now, but out of curiosity, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Michigan, so it was in the snow belt area. So we had a lot of snow, very cold, and I'm very thankful to not be in the cold anymore.
Yeah. What I find so interesting about your level of honesty regarding that is many people grow up with parents that have been traumatized or grandparents that have been traumatized for a variety of reasons, but nobody unpacked it before generationally. And then all of a sudden, like in our generation now, including millennials and Generation Z, now individuals who have the strength, the courage, the emotional intelligence are unpacking that and realizing it might not be them, even if the ball falls in their court. What say
Yeah.
you?
Yeah, so for me, I would say really what I dealt with, I hit what people would say is successful in business several times, and I would always find a way to get rid of it. And so I just thought that I was broken. Like for whatever reason, these bad luck, or I just can't figure it out. Um, and that really led to a lot of searching and trying to figure out, trying to think how to say this. Trying to figure out what I had to do to stop hurting. I think what I realized was I kept using these other things outside of me that people said would make me feel better, to feel good inside. And what I realized was that I really needed to feel good inside. And then what I would create would be a lot more sustainable and long-term legacy, basically
Sure,
what we're.
sure. In the foundation. I wonder if there was almost a belief around worthiness. Like, do I deserve this success? And then therefore, if there was even some subconscious belief that one wasn't deserving, then the self-sabotage would kick in.
Yeah, so for sure, I watched my mom stay with my dad through the abuse. And so another belief that I've unpacked was that suffering equals strength. So if I was suffering, I was showing that I was strong enough or worthy enough to be loved or to be successful. And so it couldn't be easy. It had to involve, look how much I can put up with.
Yeah, look how much you can tolerate.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so interesting because a lot of times, and I know I brought up role models in the first question, a lot of the times we see something modeled and then we think that's the only way.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
or this becomes a story of our reality. And, as a youngster, you have to make meaning of your environment. And if that's the meaning that you make, who knows, each person's trauma is individual for them. And I know now that I help men work through it, most men think their feelings instead of feel their feelings. And so, when we're younger, we're taught as, young men or little boys, don't cry, or, rub some dirt in it, or, if you're going to be loud, go in the other room, all of those things. So it makes it not okay to express our feelings. So we just go to our head, which is safe, and think our feelings instead of feel our feelings.
Yeah, absolutely. I think also sometimes men will perhaps allow anger, the emotion of anger, to lead because they don't have necessarily the vocabulary or the patience or the capacity to break down all the other emotions like confusion, sadness, disappointment, etc. So let me circle back. Oh, sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I think my opinion is that anger typically is masking fear of some sort. So
Yeah.
I think that you're afraid of loss or afraid of or confused, and so anger typically gives you space to process things, or it gives you some significance if you don't feel like you're getting the attention or you're afraid you're going to lose the attention. I think anger accomplishes both of those.
Yeah. So why did your mom stay? Was it financial?
I don't know. I don't know. Probably partially religious beliefs, because we were raised, or we, my parents raised us in a very religious environment where that was like, you stay no matter what, and unless there's infidelity, which I don't think there ever was. But yeah, I think that's why, probably the religious beliefs.
Okay. So out of
Yeah.
curiosity, looking back, why do you think your father chose to be abusive?
Um, hmm.
Like, did his daddy do it and his daddy did it and or
I
did he
don't,
just get trapped in life?
I had a really good relationship with my grandpa, and I never heard that he was physically abusive, but I certainly could witness where he could be mentally um, tough. Back, it's a couple generations ago, that was probably fairly common. Um, but yeah, my grandpa did a lot for my dad, even as my dad was struggling with different things. So I really just think my dad was confused and struggled with a temper, because many times he would be fun and take us out to do things and, be involved. We just never knew what version we were going to get, or if something would set him off. And then, yeah, at that point, he, uh, yeah, reverted to physical, being very physical with us.
Yeah. Well, they talk about this concept called like a cycle of violence. And so I know that there was a story you had shared where you were doing really well selling newspapers, and I almost wondered if perhaps he was jealous of you, which then again later on down the road you're successful in business and then you self-sabotage. But if I rewind the clock, I just wonder maybe if he got trapped in life and couldn't find opportunities or open doors to make it happen.
Yeah, that could be. I mean, him and my mom had my older brother and me by the time my mom was 18. That was back in 1971 when I was born, so it was a long time ago, and back then that wasn't really that acceptable. And so yeah, he became a father of two boys, later to be six children, really early in life. And so yeah, he very much might have just been, always fighting to keep his head above water. I never felt like they were jealous of me doing well. In fact, in all honesty, when I was thinking about that question, I actually felt like that was the one area where I could always get praise because I had such a good work ethic. And I think that that led into some other unhealthy habits as I got older, just being a workaholic and making that the most important thing, and not actually, you know, using that for my validation instead of me as a person.
Yeah, that's honest. Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think a lot of males become achievers, overachievers, workaholics, etc. because that is a place where they can find significance and public recognition and worthiness and identity.
Yeah, well, I think again, like we talked about early on, in that achieving, it makes you feel, or you think by achieving that you're gonna fix what hurts. I don't feel good, so everybody says I just need to be successful. Well, to be successful, I have to go achieve that stuff, and then that's gonna make me feel better. And I think that's why we see the such the issues that men have when they do all of a sudden are successful and they realize that didn't work and now they feel hopeless, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. I've
Yeah.
had some very successful males say to me, is this all that there is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have some clients who are worth, hundreds of times more than me. And they will tell you flat out, doesn't matter how many zeros you have behind um, the numbers in your bank account, that has nothing to do with happiness. It certainly gives you choices, but that's not how you achieve happiness.
Yeah. Before I ask my next question, what makes you happy today?
What makes me happy? The fact that I have a really good relationship with myself and that I am radically honest and vulnerable, because I think that for the majority of my life, I didn't create connection with others because it wasn't safe. And now that I do, I realize that's really where the quality of life comes from.
And the meaning. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for, again, that boldness of to say it, because a lot of times people think it, but they won't come out and say it because
Yeah.
it's too scary for them. And then so then they,
I'm,
what, please?
I was just gonna say I'm very committed to radical honesty, and um, I realize that the more honest I am, the more permission it gives them to be, and it actually makes them feel safe. And so um, that was my trauma pattern is I'm the only safe place for me. So I didn't know what safety actually felt like. And now that I can give other people safety by being honest and vulnerable and sharing the things that we all are afraid to share because we think, oh, if I share that, they're not going to like me, or oh, if I
Yeah.
share that, they're going to think I'm bad or broken. And what it really does is it actually creates connection. Our brain lies to us and says, oh, if you share that, if they find out who you really are, then they'll leave. And
Mm.
that's why we actually never create connection because we just put this good version of ourselves out there that we think everybody will accept. And then when everybody likes that version, we don't feel liked because it's not us that they're connecting with.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. I know that the world and people in the world today crave authenticity. And so I think that um, to be authentic is, yeah. Um, so you've shared that one's emotional intelligence is hindered when there are limiting stories. So would you share maybe one or two of those stories that you either had to process or um, reinvent the story when you were ready and could gain perspective?
Yeah, I think I shared, that I'm the only safe place for me was one.
Okay.
Uh, and learning to care enough about myself to not let other people abuse me, or for me to not even abuse myself when I would mess up. And that was a really big realization when my coach said to me, um, how do you feel about these different reactions that you've had? And I'm like, I hate them. I think they're the reason why I am struggling. And he told me, he said, until you love that part of yourself, uh, you'll never let go of it, or you'll never stop doing that because that's basically it needs to express itself to get attention. And I always thought like, oh, if I give it attention, it's gonna grow instead of give it the proper attention and then it actually goes away. And so, yeah, that was one that I had to process. And then I think the universal one of, I'm not good enough, or I'm a burden. And so, like, learning uh, to change the languaging, or, the language that I use around myself, or even the feelings that I had towards that. And you know, and we all compare, and we're always comparing our worst traits with the highlight reels that we see of everyone else and wonder why it's so frustrating. But once you realize that, um, uh, I learned a phrase that has made a huge difference for me. Whatever happened couldn't have happened any other way because it didn't. And so the moment that I truly believe that, it no longer, I never ashamed to myself or gave myself a hard time. I just was able to go, okay, what was the lesson? And then just move forward.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. I think a lot of times um, to process something, we think like, oh, well, if I look at that, it could take me over. It's like there's a concept called coactive coaching, and one of the modalities is known as it's known as process coaching. And it's like you get the client to stand in front of like this house, and they've got to open the door and walk down the hallway, and it's a dark hallway, and there's lots of rooms and doors to the left and the right, and you ask the client open up every single door, and what you're asking them to do is go deeper and farther into that emotion that they have either compartmentalized or suppressed, and they're better for it. But in that moment, they're scared to walk down the dark hallway, even if it's just a metaphor.
Sure, sure.
Yeah, yeah. But yet that's where we find our freedom, because then once you walk down the dark hallway and you open up 5 or 10 different doors, you can reframe and find perspective and change that story and reinvent the.
Yeah, because the story was created as a child, and what people, I think they don't really realize is that we can change that anytime that we want to. In fact, our past is changing all the time, the way that we remember it, because when I was 30 looking at my past, I was looking at it through a 30-year-old lens. And when I was 40 looking at my past, I had learned a lot more in 10 years. And so I looked at my past a different way, and now the same at 50. And so we actually are recreating our past in our memory all the time. And so why not do that intentionally when those stories surface that don't serve us any longer? Reframe the story to be a lesson that helps us or supports us rather than our past pushing forward and keeping us stuck in the past.
Yeah, I think it's so powerful. You just said that we can go back at any time.
Yeah.
Yeah, would you say it one more time for the listeners?
Yeah, I just said that we get to go back. We have the choice to go back and reframe our memory of these different events, and we can turn them into a positive uh, by choice. A lot of times, it's funny how addicted we are to the negative in the story because that gives us some sort of significance or uh, an excuse as to why we haven't, you know, done some of the things that we know we could. And so the moment we reframe that, it can be a really powerful catalyst to shift and change our life quickly.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted you to emphasize that again, because sometimes people can think that because I can't go to Monaco or I can't go to London or wherever the place is, and the answer is like right where you're at.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can
Yeah.
shift internally regarding this internal landscape and the internal world. And again, it's countercultural because we don't go down to the local coffee shop or Starbucks and say, "Hi, I'd like to chat with you about my internal world." No, we talk about news, sports, and weather.
Right. Right.
Yeah, but that
Yeah.
internal world is like you had said, once you realize that you can create your future and your happiness and your peace of mind from the inside out, the freedom that you felt. And most
Yeah.
people think that that's not real until they've done it.
Right. Well, I mean, in reality, yeah, in all reality, what is real? It's our version of what we're living. You know, we think we're so unique, but everybody is going through those exact same things and struggling with those exact same things. And so once you learn to be able to articulate it in a way that's not shaming or blaming, but just sharing, it gives people words to use or even expressions so that they can start to understand. And, you know, it's kind of like that, you know, the crack in the pavement where the plant starts growing through. And that's really all it takes a lot of times if someone's committed to it.
Yeah. Before I ask you what you think about the word legacy, I'm curious, did you ever circle back and share with either of your parents what you've learned in terms of a personal development standpoint?
I haven't, and the reason my dad passed away about 10, I think 10 years ago now. He was pretty young, but he was very unhappy and unhealthy, and so I didn't get that chance. And because of the religion that my parents are, I don't subscribe to that, and so for that reason, we don't have a relationship. So I just haven't.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there's points of relating, and if you aren't able to relate to them, then it would have been an awkward conversation because they would have had to have been open-minded enough to say, Matthew, I'm curious, what is it that you're discovering in the world as an adult now?
Yeah, and I think they would if it wasn't for that barrier. I
Okay.
don't, yeah, I genuinely think in what I've learned and processed that, my mom did the best she could with what she knew. And, her emotional safety, she had to shut down in order to be able to, deal with a lot of the stuff that she did. And so yeah, I have zero animosity towards my parents at all for any of it. So.
Yeah. Probably as a mother, she was trying to keep like what I call like the glue energetically together to keep the family together. So it's like she's picking up the pieces and can't even be in that place to process anything because the brain just goes into survival mode.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just curious again, and I know you can't go back in time, but there's that expression, what's eating Gilbert Grape, it was also a movie. And I wondered, like with your father, if it was just that did he not see his dreams realized and that got, pushed to the wayside and then that caused him to be unhappy? Because one of the things I've picked up on in adult life is people are either growing forwards or they can start to slide back. And it can happen very much in the invisible, and the circle of people around them can do nothing and say nothing, and that person can just slide backwards. And
Yeah,
nobody,
I think we live so much in our subconscious that most people aren't conscious. And I don't think that that's even been an awareness for past generations. I think that that's something that we've all um really started discovering. And so yeah, I have a feeling, they were just living out their internal stories rather than they weren't making conscious choices of,
okay,
oh, we're gonna do this, that, whatever. It was more of a reaction to life instead of a go out and create life.
yeah, well, go out and create life is a lot of personal agency.
Yeah, no,
That's like
no.
leadership
And it
101,
takes
201.
work. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I always tell, because I deal with so many business people, that's who we work with. Um, Business is an inner game. It's constantly holding up a mirror to you and telling you, where you're not showing up and where you're not good enough yet and where you need to improve in in order to make the business work and be successful. And that's another thing, just the way my mind works for problem solving. The more I got the more I healed and then started sharing my story with other business people, the more I realized other business people typically have a history of trauma. And I just thought, oh, that's really odd. It's like almost everyone. And then I thought through that, like, well, what is trauma? It's a feeling of loss of control. Well, when in business do we feel like we're in control? Really never. Things are always changing and moving. And so, in order for us to even choose to operate and live in that inside of that environment means that we probably at some point dealt with trauma and formed some sort of coping mechanism, which could be workaholic, alcoholic, anything like all the different vices that we have or that people have. And so yeah, I just think in general, the entrepreneurial people in as a general rule have some sort of coping mechanism to be able to operate inside of that environment without, just thinking it's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of times people don't have the tools, but I think you have found the tools, whether it's through coaching, seminars, books, and so forth. So I appreciate that you're sharing your own personal testimony in a sense as evidence that you can go from point A to point B.
Yeah.
You don't
Yep.
have to stay stuck in A.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Totally
So
believe that.
since this is a legacy podcast, what does this word mean to you? And what is it? that you would like to consciously pass on?
Hmm. I think legacy is what you're remembered for once you're no longer here. Um, and I am consciously working towards building a legacy where I can help children um, deal in a healthy manner with the things, the stories that they create at a young age, because um, just the way our brain works, the longer that we keep that story, the more confirmation bias we build around it. And in building that confirmation bias, the harder the work is to kind of dissolve that story. And so I've noticed that when I work with younger people, they're able to upgrade their stories much faster and in a really positive manner. And so I just think, helping people, I didn't learn it until I was in my mid 40s. If we could help children, high schoolers, young adults to do this work and upgrade their stories and deal with that in a healthy manner, that would make a huge difference.
Yes. How else are you breaking the emotional patterns regarding past cycles of abuse?
I would say in my coaching work, a lot of times, uh, what I've noticed is that we attract the people to us that, have similarities. And so as I work with them through their different challenges, a lot of time addresses some of my own, or even just makes me more aware, and I can tie that into what I'm doing. So I think that that's probably why I find it so fulfilling, because I'm still growing and learning while doing it, and I'm kind of paying it forward.
Yeah, that's beautiful. There's that concept about service to self compared to service to others. And I think right now, when you're doing service to others, it just is going to make you feel more connected and alive and excited about life every day.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I truly feel the level of connection that you form with others is the level of quality of life that you have. It doesn't matter how much money or things or places that you've been, if you had to do it all by yourself, it wouldn't be near as fulfilling. And so when you get to share it with other people, or you get to grow and learn, and create connection with other people, I think that that's really where the quality of life comes from.
Yes, very much. Thank you. Thank you for speaking into that. Because I think a lot of times there's an emptiness sometimes that people feel, especially in 2024 today. And so to steer them back to this idea of it goes back to the connection and not necessarily the materialism
Yeah, well, if
and
you
the
only
status.
present the part of you that you think is acceptable, and that's who you let people see, um, that doesn't ever create connection with you yourself. It's this persona that's outside of you that you're presenting. And so I think when we drop that persona and we're just authentic and vulnerable, that is what creates true connection, and you can feel the difference immediately.
Yeah. What do you think your parents would have wanted their legacy to be?
Um, yeah, funny enough, like I do think that they wanted their children, they did want their children to be happy and, you know, successful, whatever that meant. Certainly to them, money was never, a big thing, because they never really had it. We were very, very modest means. So I think, yeah, that their kids were happy in all reality.
Yeah. Some parents, when I ask them that question, they'll say, I would like my legacy to be my children. Other people will say, I would like my legacy to be to break generational patterns or to buy a sports team. So it's across the board regarding the spectrum of answers. I just was curious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely don't think that they had any big ambitious goals other than that they just wanted us to be happy.
Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. In 1 to 2 sentences, what would you like your holistic legacy to be?
Um, that I never shied away from doing the work myself, and that I was able to pay it forward and help other people learn sooner than I did.
That's beautiful. That's
Yeah.
lovely. What would you say would be your top 3 to 4 core values that you lead with today and or that you would like to incorporate more into the development of your legacy?
Hmm. I would say integrity is, I actually even have that tattooed on my body. So I think integrity first with myself, and then with others. And I would say again, then it would go to the being radically honest, obviously with tact, so that you can be authentic and vulnerable and connect with others. And I think if you do those two things or those three things, um, yeah, express yourself authentically and with integrity, that I think the world is it's whatever we want it to be.
Yeah. Thank you. I definitely can see that. And I wonder if I might also add healing to that list.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, yeah. I think that that is a, yeah, I think we all, no matter what, we develop certain forms of wounds that we need to heal or that we can choose to heal. And yeah, I think that that would be uh, just as important that we do the work to choose that.
If you were to set aside a weekend or two a month for the next year to design a hardcover coffee table book, what images or content would fill its pages?
Yeah, I think it would be the people that I spent time with and the places that I visited. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. That's good. It goes by so fast.
it does. Yeah,
Yeah,
I definitely go back through and look at my pictures and think of memories and do that. And so, yeah, I do. You realize that that is actually where the value in life is, not in the stuff that you owned and houses and stuff. Yeah.
yeah. Very cool, very cool. Do you have any final thoughts that you would like to share, including a website of your business, before I read the closing paragraph?
Um, I guess just that I'm grateful that I've had this conversation with you, and hopefully that there's, something in here that is valuable to somebody else. Yeah.
Very cool, very cool. And your business's website, people could learn more about you.
Yeah. So yeah, that we deal with helping people's website convert, make more money. It's called Build, Grow, Scale. So it'd be at buildgrowscale.com. And my email is just matt@buildgrowscale.com. Um, but I'd like to talk about that or this. So either or, I'm
Yeah.
open.
Well, it's interesting. Your business has done really well, like looking at the numbers.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
we stopped counting 4 or 5 years ago, but we probably have close to 800-900 million dollars run through our conversion optimized carts and things like that. And so yeah, we've helped create a lot of success in the e-commerce world.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being a guest. Before I read my closing paragraph, I just wanted to take a minute to thank you for the wisdom that you brought. We set the intention about for this episode about what if radical honesty could be that powerful catalyst in designing your legacy, and I think we have fulfilled that in our conversation today in looking at the value being the connection with others. That is truly the emotional gold, and also looking at one's internal beliefs that we can go from I am the only safe place for me to there are lots of safe places and people in this world. And also understanding that trauma can just simply be a loss of control. So it's not as if it's just segregated to one financial strata of society. It crosses across the spectrum of the human experience. And that again, business is an inner game. Um, and I think most of all, you had shared that the longer we keep the story, the more the confirmation bias. So I think those were some of the highlights and nuggets. So thank you very much for your time and generosity today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Okay. In closing, I'm Angelina Carleton, the hostess of the Design Your Legacy podcast, as well as the founder of Legacy Planning, a boutique advisory firm based out of Beverly Hills, California, but international in those I coach and consult. I hope to dive deep into subjects that can help a person define, develop, and execute their legacy. and continue to scour the landscape for those who can be great resources to every dimension of your legacy. For many listeners, there can never be enough education and preparation in the moot or moat around your castle. Whether you find yourself with new wealth or generational wealth, may the content on this channel be an anchor in any storms ahead. We do our best to provide original content for your intellectual and emotional curiosity. Thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you, Matthew, for speaking into your legacy.